Die verbruik van Wagyu-vleis het die afgelope jaar viervoudig onder Suid-Afrikaners toegeneem. Wat is die redes vir hierdie toename? Johan de Vos en Dr. Michael Bradfield van die Wagyu-vereniging van Suid-Afrika kuier vanoggend in die ateljee om hieroor te gesels. Daarna gee Francois Knowles van APAC perspektief oor 'n nuwe stel reëls vir die veilingsbedryf in die gesig staar. Vir nou oor analise vir die jongste landbounuus.
Pioneer, gemaak om te groei.
In vandag se nuus, 'n besproeiingsboer van die Douglas-omgewing in die Noord-Kaap, Gerard Brouwer, is as die Toyota SA Agri SA Jongboer van die Jaar aangewys. Gerard het saam met jongboere van ander provinsies deurgedring na die nasionale ronde, wat verlede week tydens 'n glansgeleentheid in Kempton Park aangebied is. Beverly Joseph is by dieselfde geleentheid as die New Harvest Boer van die Jaar gekroon. Beverly is deur Optimal Agricultural Business Systems vir hierdie toekenning genomineer. En steeds by toekennings, die J.K. Basson Family Trust van Darling in die Wes-Kaap is as die Landbou Navorsingsraad se nasionale meestersuiwelboer van die jaar aangewys. Hierdie gesogte kompetisie vier Suid-Afrika se beste kommersiële en kleinskaalse presteerders in die bedryf. Zim Dairy tussen Harrismith en Kestel in die Vrystaat is as die LNR se nasionale kleinskaalse meestersuiwelboer van die jaar aangewys. Zim Dairy het tydens die geleentheid ook 'n spesiale toekenning vir innoverende ontwikkeling deur 'n suiwelprodusent ontvang. According to Statistics SA, the Consumer Price Index for October remained unchanged at 5%. Overall food inflation fell to 6.7% year-on-year in October, after having reached a 54-month high of 7.4% in August. Davi Maria from F&B says it seems as if food inflation may have reached a turning point and would level out going forward. Transport inflation, however, jumped 10.9% in October 2021 compared to October 2020. This could negate its impact on headline inflation. He ascribed the decline in food inflation to a slowdown in price growth across most food categories, particularly bread, grains, and meat. And that's today's news. Johan de Vos, chairman of the Wagyu Society of South Africa, recently told the Wagyu AGM that Wagyu in South Africa has experienced a fourfold increase in consumption of meat over the past year. And that's our topic of discussion this morning. I'd like to welcome Johan de Vos and Dr. Michael Bradfield. He is the CEO of Wagyu South Africa. Morning, gentlemen.
Yes, nice to be here. Thank you very much.
Yes. Johan, very interesting findings. What would you say are the main drivers behind this increase in consumption?
We're quite blessed that the South African consumer are quickly discovering the Wagyu value, the eating experience, and therefore we've grown 400% in our carcass slaughter rate over the last year. And what is even more encouraging is that we see that graph continuing. With the rollout at some of our supermarkets and our top delis and butcheries, we see that trend continuing even today. So that is quite exciting for us as a breed.
Mm-hmm. How are these results determined?
Well, fortunately, we've got cameras in each abattoir where Wagyu is slaughtered. Because of the marbling, we actually measure each carcass through a camera image taken on a cut in the rib. And then we use the internet to determine the marbling, the outside fat, and the marbling fineness. So each carcass is scientifically evaluated and use back into the system to create breeding values for our breeders.
So, Michael, what do you predict for growth in the industry for the next 10 years?
Yes, just going back to where
Yes.
on the previous question, and there's a whole audit process right from birth of the calf right through to slaughter. So it's not a case of the society says this is what's being slaughtered. For example, we got an outside PDSG, they're an international company. They audit every single producer, and they audit those carcasses to ensure that our figures are correct, etc. So there's a whole audit process that ensures that those figures are correct, and that's what excites us also so much, because the consumer can be assured that the product that they get is an audited product as well. What we say is Wagyu, and we probably get to that just now. Yes, so the international growth, we actually, South Africa is now administrator of the World Wagyu, and so we had our World Wagyu conference last year, and we can see America sits with a shortage of about 40%, UK about the same. Japan, where Wagyu originated, also has a shortage. They import a lot of their Wagyu from Australia. And so internationally there's a big demand for the product. One of our challenges has been supplying the international markets. Our health status animal health status in South Africa is not of the best in the world, foot and mouth, etc. But there have now been significant breakthroughs for our members to be able to export as well. And it's always this balance of supplying the South African market, which is terribly important for us, but also supplying internationally, because then you can get dollar parity for your product.
So how will all of this affect the price? Because it's an expensive meat to buy.
Yes, in fact, you're probably paying a quarter of the value for Wagyu in South Africa compared to what you'd be paying internationally. And we're not embarrassed by the fact that it is an expensive product. Those animals are only slaughtered at about 2.5 years, and so they stay for a long period of time on grass, where we call them happy cows, and then we round them off in a feedlot so that the marbling comes through. So it costs a lot of money to produce a top product, and so consumers can never expect to pay cheap, get cheap meat as such. It's not a commodity beef. It is a high-end product. But it's also eaten differently. You don't take a really good chocolate and down a whole slab, for example.
Bikkie for bikkie.
Bikkie for bikkie. That's exactly it. And that's how you eat Wagyu as well. Nobody in their right mind is going to take a 300-gram steak and think that they're going to just down it. You're going to feel terrible afterwards, because it's a rich product, full of marbling, all the good fat, etc.
Well, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, we'll focus on the grading of carcasses.
Goeiemôre kykers, in vandag se termynmarkverslag kan daar gesien word dat grane sowel as oliesade verlede week baie goed gedoen het vir lewering in Maart op die JSE. Witmielieprys het week op week met 7,5% gestyg, terwyl geelmielies 5,4% duurder is. Koringprys het ook 2,8% gestyg. Sonneblom se prys is 6,2% hoër, terwyl sojabone 3,8% in prys toegeneem het. Die goeie nuus is dat die olieprys week op week met 4% gedaal het tot onder die $79 per vat, maar die rand het in dieselfde tyd verswak teenoor die vernaamste geldeenhede, 2,6% verloor teenoor die dollar, 2,8% verloor teenoor die pond en 0,9% verloor teenoor die euro.
Welcome back. We are talking about Wagyu meat and the increase in consumption in South Africa and worldwide. Johan, how many producers do we have in South Africa?
At this stage, we've got 150 breeders and producers of the animals. But quite excitingly, South Africa is seen as a leader in the world with a certified Wagyu system. So there's a certification program where not only the breeder is a member, but also the abattoir, the meat packer, and the retailer. That allows us to manage the whole process through the certification process. We also then are able to take the DNA sample of that calf as it's born and trace that animal right through the point of slaughter and even into the shelf where the consumer will have it. And that allows us to audit it and to create a system which in an environment where health is critical, especially in Southern Africa, that we can isolate our herd and ensure safety and security to the customer.
Let's get back to the carcasses. How are they graded?
Well, we grade in terms of marbling score. As I said initially, we've got the camera that measure the grading in terms of the fat content, the fat fineness, and then we grade it from a 3 to a 9 marbling score. And only certain marbling scores are then released to the customer.
Right.
And the customer can then therefore see the certified Wagyu sticker on the packaging as well as a marbling score.
Mm-hmm. Michael, I think you need to explain. I think there's quite a few viewers out there that don't know what is marbling exactly and how it is achieved in an animal.
Yeah, so marbling is, well, if you take all fat out of meat will taste exactly the same. So it's only the fat that distinguishes chicken. If you eat a chicken, you can say, oh, this is chicken, but you can taste the fat. And the same thing with meat. And we traditionally, in especially South Africa, we've actually taken the fat out of the meat. We made meat very, very lean. But by doing that, we increased the yield, but made the product very dry. So the marbling is a special type of fat because it's monounsaturated mostly. And that's the small white specks of fat you find inside meat. So Wagyu, you'll show a picture there, but it will have lots of the fine meat fat inside the meat. And that's associated with tenderness. So the more marbling in the meat, the higher, the more tender the meat, but especially the juiciness and flavor. The more marbling there is inside the meat, the more juicy it becomes and the more flavorful it is. That relates back to the question you asked Johan. So that's why we grade them. The higher the marbling scores, the more valuable the carcass. And so, as Johan mentioned, from 3 to 9 plus, as the marbling score increases, the more juicy, and the more flavorful, and more tender the product becomes. And that's why we put a guarantee on the product out there through our certification product.
So is this a healthy fat?
Yes, very much so.
It's important.
Yes, very much so. And that's what we're so proud about. It's full of oleic acid, the same fat you get in an avocado. So, and it's also got the highest omega-3 and omega-6 levels of any beef fat. And interestingly, very low levels of monosaturated fat, the palmitic acid. Yes, so a lot of scientists will tell you that Wagyu is very, very different to any other fat.
Johan, in closing, how do you cook Wagyu? Is there a specific way? Have you got some recommendations?
Well, number one, you cannot mess up Wagyu. It's very tough to do that. It's such a good quality meat. What I prefer to do is to cut it in thin slices, cook it over a barbecue, couple of seconds on the side, serve it with a little bit of soy sauce or a little bit of English mustard, just to give that taste sensation, and roll it in a piece of lettuce. And that gives that's a traditional way the Japanese would also eat.
So not to overcooked or undercooked. That's also important.
But you can play a little bit.
Yeah.
Those that prefer it undercooked, do it the way you normally do your steak, and those that prefer it a little bit well done, do it.
Yeah.
But try and eat it in smaller pieces. Use a little bit of soy sauce and wrap it in a lettuce leaf, and you'll get that taste sensation.
Well, that sounds very tasty. And if you haven't tasted Wagyu, do so. Daar is vroeër in die jaar aangekondig dat die veilingsbedryf 'n nuwe stel reëls in die gesig staar. En om meer daaroor uit te vind, verwelkom ek graag vanoggend vir Francois Knowles van APAC. Eerste keer in die Plaas TV ateljee?
Eerste keer,
Soos hulle sê, long overdue.
lang overdue, baie dankie, is lekker om hier te wees.
Baie welkom. Wat het verander wat die reëls en regulasies by veilings betref, Francois?
Lisa, ons het verlede jaar, 13 November 2020, het ons die biosekuriteit reëls vir lewende hawe veilings gepubliseer gekry in die Staatskoerant. En hierdie jaar, 1 Julie, het ons dit amptelik geïmplementeer. So dit is wat nuut is in ons wêreld, nuut in die wêreld van lewende hawe.
Is dit as gevolg van COVID, of wat is die redes vir die wysigings? Onder andere, biosekuriteit, COVID, ons hoor mos al hierdie woorde.
Interessant genoeg, ons het ook verlede jaar, wat ek nie genoem het nie, het ons COVID reëls gepubliseer vir die lewende hawe veilings, dat ons daarom kon aangaan.
Ja.
Maar terug by die biosekuriteit. Biosekuriteit het te maak met dieregesondheid. Ons het in 2019 'n geweldige uitbraak gehad van back and claw seer. Ons moes 'n remedy daarvoor kry, die industrie het saamgespan, ons het selfregulerende reëls geskryf en geïmplementeer nou, en ons is nou reg om dit behoorlik vir die industrie uit te rol.
So dis die hoofredes vir die wysigings.
Korrek.
Ja. Hoe kan rolspelers verseker dat hulle aan hierdie regulasies voldoen, François?
Dis baie belangrik dat ons moet verstaan dat die veilingshuise is die tweede vlak van implementering of dan regulering, as jy wil. Dis waar die lewende hawe agent of die veilingshuise soos ons dit ken, dis waar hulle die boere en die spekulante daar buite se beeste en diere verkoop. So wat nou met die reëls waarop ons fokus, is dat die veilingshuise en die prosesse by die veilings nou sal behoorlik bestuur volgens 'n stel reëls. Ons bestuur dit volgens hierdie reëls en ons pas dit toe. En ons wil op 'n paar dinge natuurlik 'n goeie uitslag hê. Nommer 1 is die OIE, dis die Wêrelddieregesondheidsorganisasie. As ons hierdie reëls behoorlik implementeer en ons kry biosekuriteit reg, dan kan ons uitvoerstatus verbeter en weer in plek kry soos dit moet. Nommer 1. Nommer 2, ons moet kyk na die belang van ons eie mense, verbruiker. Verbruikers wil weet dat die vleis wat ons verbruik in Suid-Afrika deur 'n behoorlike en 'n veilige proses hanteer was. En dit is presies wat veilings nou bied. Dis 'n interessante proses, die reëls is baie voorskrifklik. Dit sê hoe en wat ons op moet fokus. Ons is in die proses om dit ook te audit. So as iemand volgens die reëls nou sy veilingsperseel opgradeer, moet ons seker maak dis wat ons wil hê, wat die uitkoms moet wees. Ek dink ons doen baie goed daarmee. Ek wil 'n lansie breek vir ons lewende hawe agente. Hulle het regtig opgestaan, hulle het hierdie taak aangevat. Ons doen baie goed, hou die spasie dop.
Ek moet sê, ons kan getuig daarvan. Ons was by een van daardie waar die biosekuriteit baie goed is. Net vinnig, is daar gevolge as hierdie reëls nie gevolg word nie?
Daar is gevolge. Ons moet verstaan dat die industrie, en kom ek gee 'n goeie voorbeeld, voerkrale, hulle kyk met baie streng oë na ons oor hoe die biosekuriteit hanteer word. As dit reg plaasvind by veilingspersele, gaan hulle ons weer baie goed ondersteun. Dis wat ons wil hê.
En waar is hierdie reëls beskikbaar vir mense om na te gaan kyk?
Hierdie reëls is beskikbaar op die webblad van APAC, en enige iemand wat dit wil persoonlik hê, kan my kontak of my kantoor kontak. Ons deel dit graag.
François, baie dankie.
Baie dankie vir die geleentheid.
Dis dan nuwe reëls in die veilingsbedryf en Francois Knowles van APAC het vandag met ons daaroor gesels.